Jesse Minter continues to request coaches to interview for his Baltimore Ravens staff, and his latest request is really intriguing.
You are Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are Locked On Ravens. Welcome into the show. I'm your host, Kevin Ostreicher of Ravens Wire, here with you on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, and now the #1 sports podcast network. Appreciate everybody for being here, making Locked On Ravens a part of your day. We have 5 days a week plus more of daily Ravens coverage and content. And we also have a jam-packed episode today, as we always do on Locked On Ravens. We're going to talk about Jesse Minter making an intriguing coaching request. He's made a lot of really intriguing requests, but this one I think is both intriguing and smart in a lot of different ways. In the second part of the show, Nnamdi Madubuike, he sparked some questions on his future with a very vague social media post. And then finally, we'll talk about Declan Doyle and that a little bit more, because obviously that's big news. Jesse Minter hiring as offensive coordinator. Thanks so much to all the everydayers, the first-time listeners. If you're somewhere in the middle, thank you as well. And today's bonus edition of Locked On Ravens is brought to you by FanDuel. It's the last call for football on FanDuel. If you're a new customer, bet just $5 and get $200 in bonus bets if you win. All right, let's dive into this. But first, very quickly, I want to apologize for all the technical difficulties I had yesterday. In audio form, I checked everything. I check it twice. I actually triple check everything to make sure it's okay, and it was. But then somewhere along the way, even though the episode played in the morning, in audio form, it did not. So I re-uploaded it there. It's available now to listen in audio form. It was all fine on the video side of things. I don't know what happened. I got a couple of messages about it and comments on YouTube about it not being available in audio form for some reason, even though it did work earlier in the morning. So again, apologies for any inconvenience there. I had it up at 6 a.m., so I don't know what happened. But my rule of thumb generally is if it's not in one place and not working, whether it's video form or audio form, it usually is in the other place. So appreciate everybody for understanding that. And yeah, that bonus episode, for those who might have missed it in audio form, it is up now to listen in the re-uploaded version. For some reason, the original version didn't work. So just wanted to talk a little bit about that real quick. But let's get into Jesse Minter and this latest coaching interview request. Ian Rappaport on Saturday, he reported that the Ravens have requested to interview, in my opinion, a really intriguing name, Ronald Curry. And he has requested to interview for the quarterback coach position. Now, Curry most recently has worked as the quarterback's coach for the Buffalo Bills. He's worked with Josh Allen for the past 2 years. He actually went to Buffalo in 2024. Before that, he was at New Orleans for a long time under Sean Payton, offensive assistant 2016 to 2017. You also have him as the wide receivers coach, quarterbacks coach there, then quarterback coach and pass game coordinator. So he continued to work up the ranks. And, you might be thinking, wait, Sean Payton, why does that sound familiar? Well, as we've talked about over the last 24, 48 hours, depending on when you're listening to this, Declan Doyle, the Ravens' new offensive coordinator, was with the Saints from 2019 to 2022. So there was overlap on the Saints staff between Declan Doyle and Ronald Curry. Obviously, those years were from 2019 to 2022. Curry was there for all of those years. Doyle came and went in those seasons. But it's interesting because, again, it's about the connections, right? Like, now that Doyle's in, you have access to a little bit more of that Sean Payton, Ben Johnson type of tree. With Jesse Minter coming in, you have access to a little bit more. It's like the NFL is such a connection-based business. Now, for those that don't know about Ronald Curry, he is considered one of the greatest Virginia high school athletes ever. Like, he is unbelievable. He led his school to 3 consecutive state titles from 1995 to 1997 in football, and 1 in basketball in 1998. He was unbelievable in Virginia. He went to Hampton High School, obviously, All-American in basketball and football, Dial Award winner, which is for the National High School Scholar Athlete of the Year. That was in 1997. He won the McDonald's Slam Dunk Contest, MVP of McDonald's All-American Game, and he verbally actually committed to play both basketball and football at Virginia before signing with North Carolina, which obviously that was a tough decision for Virginia fans there. Then at North Carolina, he set a lot of records there. He most career passing yards, most career total yards, most valuable player in the postseason bowl games he played in, Las Vegas Bowl, and then the Peach Bowl. And he also played with Julius Peppers in North Carolina basketball, which I think is really, really cool. So he was at North Carolina, obviously, for both football and basketball. Then he was drafted by the Raiders in the 7th round. His career in the NFL, he was with then the Oakland Raiders from 2002 to 2008, then with Detroit and St. Louis in 2009. But that's when his career ended up, ending in the professional level before transitioning into coaching 5 years later. First called on with San Francisco as an offensive assistant in 2014, 2015. And look, we know that, experience matters, and Curry obviously has worked with a bunch of different quarterbacks, especially in New Orleans, obviously, with Drew Brees and a couple of other guys. But I think it's interesting because Ronald Curry also had a couple of coordinator interviews this cycle. He interviewed for both the Broncos and the Jets offensive coordinator positions. And yes, Josh Allen was already well established when Ronald Curry went to Buffalo, but Josh Allen did win the MVP under Ronald Curry in 2024, even though we all know who should have won that award, but it's okay. And then 2025, obviously, with Josh, he had another good year. So it'd be intriguing for Curry to go from Josh Allen to Lamar Jackson. But I think this sparks a lot of questions about, since Ravens have requested him to interview for the quarterback's coach, what does that mean for T. Martin? Now, obviously, when you fire a head coach, you're moving on from a lot of other coaches as well. There's been speculation about T. Martin and, would he have been up for the Ravens offensive coordinator job? Clearly, the answer to that question was no, he did not get that job. But to me, I think T still, I would love T to come back as the quarterback's coach. I think Curry's really intriguing. And again, the new staff is going to bring in their guys. And very rarely do you have a lot, if any, holdovers from that staff. Randy Brown is obviously one of them, and Tyler Santucci another. But generally, you don't really get a ton of those situations. With Todd Monken now being in Cleveland as the head coach and the Giants offensive coordinator situation being a mess now with that, maybe T. Martin goes and calls plays for John Harbaugh in New York. So the fact that they're interviewing Ronald Curry, doesn't necessarily bode well for the future of T. Martin in Baltimore, especially because the offensive coordinator position is now taken up by Declan Doyle. But I think Curry could bring some interesting perspective. I think for T. Martin, the value obviously is from his experience, him being with the organization, the familiarity. And obviously, he and Lamar have a relationship. T's worked with the wide receivers in Baltimore as well. So, he has an understanding of how the franchise does things. But again, this is a new era here. And I would not be shocked if they decide to hire Ronald Curry, who, again, is not tied down to Buffalo right now because, they fired Sean McDermott. And, Joe Brady, there's more of a likelihood that because it was an internal hire, more of the coaching staff returns. And maybe, Curry, if it's for a lateral move like this, maybe the Bills decide to block him from that. I don't know how that's going to work, but it is a very intriguing thing. I keep coming back to that word intriguing because I think it's smart to, again, if T goes to the Giants, you don't have a backup option. You're not kind of working because, all these teams are working to try to fill out their staffs right now. I think it's smart of Jesse Minter to get ahead of this. Now that your offensive coordinator's in place, that's a really good thing. And he can continue to build based off of, not just his situation and what his connections are, but bringing in other guys who also have connections. So I'm really intrigued about that. So Ronald Curry, a really interesting name to watch for potential spots on the Ravens staff. And I think he and Lamar Jackson could work really well together. We already know Lamar and T. Martin work really well together, but I think Ronald Curry and Lamar could work really nice together too. But coming up in the second part of the show, we'll dive into Nnamdi Madubuike sparking questions on his future and what his return could mean for the Ravens if that is what happens. So be sure to stay tuned. Plenty coming up on the show. First, the show is brought to you by TurboTax. Tax season doesn't have to take over your life. This year, TurboTax is making it easier than ever. Just hand things off and move on with your day. With TurboTax full service, you can have your taxes done for you by a trusted local expert, start to finish, without the stress or guesswork. Instead of spending hours trying to figure out forms, you can meet with a local TurboTax expert in person or connect online. They handle everything from W-2s to self-employed forms and work to get you every deduction. You can upload your documents, go about your day, and get updates right in the TurboTax app. It's a huge time saver and gives real peace of mind knowing an expert is handling it. For a limited time, you can have your taxes done by a local TurboTax expert for just $150 all in. If a TurboTax expert didn't file for you last year, just file by February 28th. Take taxes off your plate and get back to your life. Visit TurboTax.com/local to book your appointment today. And the show is brought to you by FanDuel. It's the last call for football on FanDuel. One final Sunday, one last kickoff, the final chance to get in on the action before the NFL season officially comes to a close. This is Super Bowl 60, and FanDuel's making sure you're right in the middle of it with a special offer just in time for the biggest game of the year. Whether you're back in the favorite, riding with the underdog, or building one last same-game parlay, this is the game everyone's been waiting for. This is where predictions turn into plays, stats turn into storylines, and every snap feels bigger. It's the perfect way to cap off the season, make the Super Bowl even more exciting from kickoff to the final whistle. If you're a new customer, bet just $5 and get $200 in bonus bets if you win. Make it count, because after the Super Bowl, the season is over. Last call for football on FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of Super Bowl 60. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Moving along on Locked On Ravens, Kevin Oestreicher still here with you on this bonus edition of the show here on Sunday. Thanks so much for being here, making Locked On Ravens a part of your day and your first listen each and every single day. We have 5 days a week plus more daily Ravens coverage here for you on Locked On Ravens. So be sure you hit the like and subscribe button in video form and audio form. It's the same show, both audio and video, so you're not missing out on anything either which way you decide to watch or listen. Regular show Monday through Friday, 6 a.m. Eastern time, but we also have bonus episodes on the weekend like these when there are headlines to talk about. We also have instant reactions after pieces of big news for the Ravens, as well as during the season after games. We have watch-alongs during the games during the season, plus a Locked On Ravens squad show twice a week. Myself, Sam Njoku, former Ravens receiver Kadri Ismail, chopping it up Mondays and Wednesdays, 7:30 p.m. Eastern time. We also have the Everydayer Club, which is extra stuff that we just don't have time for on the show anymore, and other perks. So weekly Q&As, ad-free episodes. You got one-on-one text conversations with me, Discord server access. There's so much, so be sure you check that out. Link in the description below, as well as on the Locked On website. You can go to the Locked On Ravens page and find everything there as well. All right, Nnamdi Madubuike. He is one of the big important pieces on this Baltimore Ravens defense. We all know that, especially after how this pass rush looked when he was not out there on the field after suffering that neck injury, a very scary injury for anybody, and he was done for the season. There have been questions about Nnamdi and his future and his NFL future. And obviously, I've said this, right? Like, neck injuries are scary for anybody. And, you know, the number one priority for Nnamdi is just being healthy as a person, not a football player, as a person, right? Obviously, football is secondary when it comes to someone's life. And so I just hope from like a personal, like Nnamdi as a person perspective, I want him to be okay in that aspect. Now, obviously, if he's able to return to the football field at any point, that's a very big bonus for the Ravens. But Nnamdi took to social media, and right before the weekend on Friday, he posted a very cryptic tweet that, again, could have something to do with football, maybe nothing to do with football. And we're not going to spend the entire segment here just speculating over two words and an emoji. I want to use this as an opportunity to kind of talk about what his return would mean if it happens, and how the Ravens can kind of navigate both situations and what they should be doing on their D-line this offseason, regardless of whether Nnamdi returns for them or not. Last time Nnamdi tweeted from his account, or at least posted on a social media account on Twitter, was June 16th, 2024. And the last time he reposted something was October 30th, 2024. So Nnamdi Madubuike on January 30th, 2026, it's been a while, said good news with the prayer hands emoji. Now, everybody's wondering, what does this mean? Again, it could mean absolutely nothing in terms of football in the Ravens. It could be something, maybe he got good news, family member, or, something else related to his injury that doesn't have to do with football or something. Again, it could literally mean anything. So I'm not here to talk about, oh, well, what could this mean? What are the prayers? Oh, is that about football? No. But it does spark conversations about Nnamdi. And I think having a conversation about, obviously, we know who he is as a player. He is a disruptive pass rusher, someone that is extremely hard to single team. You have to put a lot of pressure on him in order to not let him win. And that opens up other guys. I mean, we know how much Travis Jones benefits from having Nnamdi Madubuike next to him and some of those other guys. Nnamdi talked about facing a lot of double teams last year. That was after his breakout 2023 and 2024. He faced a lot more double teams and obviously, was a lot. The sack numbers were always going to go down, in my opinion, unless he just absolutely balled out, which was possible, but, didn't end up happening that way. But for the Ravens and for Nnamdi, I mean, look, he ended up having 2 sacks, which led the Ravens for a while. I mean, look, he was still tied for 6th on the team in sacks, which is pretty sad. That's just more of a state of affairs thing for the Ravens pass rush. But, Nnamdi with that breakout 13.5 sack season in 2023, 2024, 6.5. Again, not bad, but obviously, the 13 sacks kind of set a standard for him. And he was on his way to having a heck of a year, in my opinion, before he had that neck injury. Now, Nnamdi's on the hook for a lot of money for this Ravens team. They paid him and he earned that contract. So, if he does have to miss more time or isn't able to come back, that there's stuff that they can, I guess, work out there. I don't have the exact specifics of that right now, but, I think that if he's able to come back, that's not going to deter me if I'm the Ravens from addressing that pass rush, right? I think that's probably the worst trap they can fall in if Nnamdi's able to return is, Nnamdi's going to save the day. Right? I don't think that's fair to Nnamdi, first of all, if that happens. And if he's not able to return again, there needs to be an emphasis on it, especially at the edge position. But, a lot of people are wondering after this, like, okay, because a lot of people would kind of, especially with what John Harbaugh was saying every time he was asked, like, that's up to Nnamdi and his team. Like, I don't want to talk about that. Like, that's up to Nnamdi to tell you and whatnot. It was looking bleak. And again, I'm not saying that his tweet all of a sudden means he's back. That'd be that wouldn't be good of me to say that because who knows what that tweet actually means. But, just kind of reflecting on this Ravens pass rush the past year, we know that they miss Nnamdi. And, Travis Jones is a great player in his own right. A couple of these guys have a lot of potential. If Nnamdi does come back and then you do add a premier pass rusher, like a vet guy alongside him, whether that's the big splash for Max Crosby or the play for Trey Hendrickson potentially or one of those other guys, Lil Matt comes in. I'm just, kind of throwing names out right now. That's huge. But I think you also continue to want to add depth because I think we saw, and again, part of it was like, I don't know why John Harbaugh didn't play Aeneas Peoples more. I think that he should have. I think Aeneas Peoples is in line, especially under Jesse Minter, for a huge breakout in year 2. But, Broderick Washington hasn't done anything for this team, right? And, that to me was not great for him. John Jenkins was really good, but, I think as he gets older, he's obviously going to be back in Baltimore this next year. You want to have other insurance behind Nnamdi, right? That to me is the big thing. And behind these other guys too, where we just don't know right now how it's going to look. But the fact, that the fact of the matter is we're going to have to play through both these scenarios until Nnamdi's able to come back. And who knows, maybe there'll be a resolution on it before free agency starts and Nnamdi will say something or, there'll be a medical resolution on it for him. I don't know what that looks like right now. There's just, we don't know anything about it. So it's not right of me to speculate on, this is what I think is going to happen because I don't know what's going to happen with Nnamdi. I am very much not sure whether he's going to be able to return or not. But either which way, I would approach it if I'm the Ravens, not because I know if he is or not. I would approach it for Baltimore as if he's not going to return. If there's not an announcement before free agency starts, I'd approach it safe because that's the safe thing to do, in my opinion, right? You don't want to bank on a guy coming back and then all of a sudden, we were banking on this guy coming back and then he doesn't and all the options are gone. So no, I would operate as if he's not going to come back because you know what? Worst case scenario in that scenario is, we have too much D-line depth. Well, that's a good thing. That's always a good thing to have too much depth. And, The resource question will be interesting in terms of like the defensive line in general, but we know this team has to get a premium edge guy in the building. Like that's not going to change whether Nnamdi comes back or not. Like those are the conversations that this Ravens team has to have right now. So again, it's something that ideally there's a solution on from a football perspective before free agency starts. But again, like I said earlier, this isn't about football with Nnamdi. It's about him as a person and him hopefully being healthy as a person. And the football stuff is just an added bonus on top of that. But again, we know that Baltimore missed him last season. It'd be a great get to have back on the football field in 2026, especially in a Jesse Minter defense. So I'm hoping for the best for Nnamdi. It's something, again, we haven't talked about a lot because there haven't been updates. And I wouldn't classify, Nnamdi's tweet as an update on the situation because could have been about anything again. So hopefully he's all right. And hopefully there'll be an update soon just for Nnamdi's sake and everything about how everything is going. But coming to the final part of the show, we'll talk a little bit more about Declan Doyle because obviously that's the big hire that Jesse Minter's made, offensive coordinator. It is in the books for Baltimore. So be sure to stay tuned. Plenty coming up on the show. First, the show is brought to you by Indeed. If you've ever hired someone who looked good on paper but wasn't the right fit, you know how important that is. When you want candidates who truly match what you're looking for, trust Indeed sponsored jobs. Hiring Indeed is all you need. Stop struggling to get your job posted on other sites. Indeed sponsored jobs put your post at the top of the page and help you reach the right candidates faster. If I needed to hire someone for this show, I'd go straight to Indeed and be very specific about what I need. Real experience, not just a resume buzzword. Instead of struggling to get your job posted, Indeed sponsored jobs helps your listing stand out and reach quality candidates faster. Spend more time interviewing candidates who check all your boxes with less stress, less time, and more results using Indeed sponsored jobs. Listeners of this show get a $75 sponsored job credit to help give your job the premium placement it deserves at Indeed.com/LockedOnNFL. Just go to Indeed.com/LockedOnNFL right now and support the show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring, do it the right way with Indeed. Continuing on this Locked On Ravens bonus episode, Kevin Oestreicher still here with you. Talking Ravens football. We talked about Jesse Minter making an intriguing coach request. We also talked about Nnamdi Madubuike SPARKS and some questions on his future. Now we're going to dive a little bit into Declan Doyle and a little bit more and talk about that hire for Jesse Minter's staff at that offensive coordinator spot. So appreciate everybody for being here again, making Locked On Ravens a part of your day and your first listen each and every single day. If you have a friend or a family member who's a Ravens fan or wants some daily Ravens coverage, be sure to send them our way over here on Locked On Ravens. We're building up incredible communities, video form, audio form, social media, and you can follow me on social media, by the way, ChaosRecord34, Twitter, Instagram, etc., etc. Now, Declan Doyle is your newest Baltimore Ravens offensive coordinator. Again, 29 years old, the same age as Lamar Jackson, comes from that Ben Johnson offense. You're going to get a wide variety of run looks, play action, zone stuff. Like there is so much with Declan Doyle in that offense that really intrigues me. And I've said it, I've been on record for the past 2 days saying that I really like this hire. Because again, my top option was Mike McDaniel for the Ravens as offensive coordinator. Once Mike McDaniel was off the board, none of the guys outside of Joe Brady, who Willie Snead, former Ravens receiver, he talked me into Joe Brady on the show, and we had him on about a week or so ago. But I think that once Joe Brady was off the board, I mean, Cliff Kingsbury didn't really inspire me to get the best out of this group and to have that ceiling. And, neither did the other guys. Like, I feel to me, I would have been totally cool with a Shield House over in Los Angeles, totally cool with Davis Webb, one of those guys. But I think Doyle is a guy that kind of checks that box, right? Super young, innovative offensive mind, can grow alongside Lamar Jackson in a different way than he did with Caleb Williams, where obviously with Caleb Williams, he was more of a developing quarterback and, from year 1 to year 2, getting the best out of him that way. With Lamar, Lamar still has the opportunity to get better, which is, again, crazy to say after the career he's had. But, it's not like Lamar is a young developing quarterback in, going into year 3. He's a veteran. He's almost 30. Like, it's going to be different in terms of the quote unquote development that Lamar can do because Lamar is already a 2-time MVP. Should be 3. But again, we're not going to dive into that. I just feel like with Declan Doyle, he can have Lamar spread his wings out even further. Because that was the thing with Greg Roman, right? We talked about that. With Greg Roman and Todd Monken, it was always about, all right, can Lamar spread his wings further? And absolutely, Todd Monken did that. I still think Todd Monk is the second best offensive coordinator this team has ever had, with Gary Kubiak being the top one. But now you have an opportunity with Declan Doyle, who, again, Sean Payton tree, Ben Johnson tree, working with quarterbacks like Bo Nix in Denver. He was the tight ends guy there. The tight end aspect of it's really big as well. Could that convince Isaiah likely to stay for another year? I don't know. I mean, now I think we're talking maybe a little crazy, but even still, like, the experience is there. And from all accounts, from people in Chicago, we talked with Lauren Cox of Locked On Bears on yesterday's show. So again, if you weren't able to listen to the show yesterday because of the audio form issues that we had, if you listen to it, now, I mean, you can hear Lauren talk about that, obviously in video form as well. Like, Lauren talked a lot about Declan Doyle and what he's going to bring to the table, and said, like, look, he said that in Chicago, it's very much like a group effort. And, Declan Doyle had a huge hand in Caleb Williams and his development, and was like, he sets up all this stuff. Ben Johnson, again, I read this out every time, seeking somebody for that offensive coordinator job. When he was looking for somebody who was extremely detail-oriented, organized, and structured, Sean Payton said he'd invest in his future. Like, this is a guy that, doesn't have any play calling experience. Is that a risk? Absolutely. It absolutely is. I'm not saying this is a risk-free move that is guaranteed to pan out because of all the good things. No. Like, of course there's risk when a guy doesn't have that experience. But I think that he is set up for success with the high floor that this Ravens offense already has with their players. The other staff, Dwayne Ledford and his zone concepts. Like, I think that's going to be really awesome when it comes to the run game, and kind of pairing that, especially with the motion that the Ben Johnson offense uses. And, the Ravens like their motion as well. Like, there's stuff that Declan Doyle, like, and Lauren kind of talked about this, he's not going to, like, take the entire Ben Johnson offense and just plop it down in Baltimore and that's it. There's going to be stuff that they continue from the Greg Roman days, because that's what they did with the run game. It's like, it was Greg Roman's run offense, but Todd put a spin on it. I'm sure that's probably going to be what happens here with Declan Doyle. There are just so many different elements of this all. But again, it's a risk, but it's a risk that I think is worth taking, because, again, even if it doesn't work and Declan Doyle isn't the offensive coordinator that I expect him to be and many expect him to be, the risk to me is worth it, because I think that the ceiling for a Declan Doyle offense is Super Bowl with Lamar Jackson. And again, like, I'm sure the ceiling for Lamar Jackson with a lot of offensive coordinators is a Super Bowl, right? But there is such potential here, and even if it doesn't work, I think there is still a good enough floor. And, he's worked under great offensive coaches. Like, he has everything he needs, in my opinion. But now it's just about experience and gaining that. And, will there be maybe a little bit of a runway that we need to give Declan Doyle? It's possible, not the Zach Gore stuff is a little different. I know a lot of people kind of look at that, but I think Declan Doyle is more prepared than Zach Gore was to take the Ravens offense to where he needs to go, compared to where we thought Zach Gore was going to take the Ravens defense. Obviously, that didn't work. But I'm excited for this hire. I'm excited for the Ravens to continue filling out this staff around him. And obviously, Jesse Minter continuing to put his fingerprints all over this Baltimore Ravens team. But that's all I have for you here today on Locked On Ravens. Thank you so much for tuning into the show. On the web, be sure to like and subscribe button in video form, and follow along and subscribe in audio form for 5 days a week, plus more of daily Ravens coverage. Coming up tomorrow, back with our regularly scheduled programming here on the show. So be sure to stay tuned, and I'll see you right back here soon on Locked On Ravens.